Welcome to the Elite BSC podcast, where our entire focus is helping commercial janitorial contractors succeed. You want a growing company, a thriving team, and healthy profits, and we are here to help. My name is Jordan Tong. I'm the founder of Elite BSC, a company dedicated to helping janitorial companies grow and thrive. I also serve as CEO and one of the owners of France Building Services. France is a janitorial company employing nearly 600 people. Since 2007, we grew from 1.5 million to more than 20 million in annual revenue and built what I think is one of the best teams in the world. The goal of Elite BSC and this podcast is to give owners in the industry a vision of where their company can be and the information and tools to get there. I want to share what I have learned over the years to make this a reality for you. Hey, building service contractors, Jordan Tong here. So today's podcast episode is going to be potentially a little bit controversial. So I know one of the two things you're not supposed to talk about is when you're in like a public setting is religion or politics. But don't worry, we're not going to do politics. But I do want to talk about cleaners and how we think about cleaners. And there's a biblical precedent that I'm gonna look into that has sort of helped shape the way that I think about my staff, my cleaning team members. I'm sure this so far sounds really obscure, and you're wondering where in the world am I going with this. So let me maybe back up just a little bit and share something I know I've shared on here at least a couple times. Is that early on when I first started in the industry, I was fresh out of college. I'd worked somewhere else for maybe a year and a half, and then I joined the family business. And I was just super success-oriented and, wanted to be, really that's the best way to describe it. I wanted to be successful, and meaning building a good company, making a lot of money, etc. And like with so many things in life, that became... The more that those two things became important, lots of other things became less important because those things were placed on a level that they shouldn't have been in terms of like priorities in my life, that it drowned out or made less of other things. And so one of the things that I found myself doing or thinking or feeling was that the people that worked in the organization were, in particularly cleaners, and those maybe directly supervising them, were a little bit more expendable in my view. And at the time, it's like, hey, I wouldn't want. I've done that job before, but I wouldn't want to have to do that job. And I tell my kids, I'm hoping that they can go to school and get an education so that they don't have to do that job, et cetera. And it sort of cultivated this thing in me that I'm oriented towards success. These people that work for me are means to get that success. And that created, I think, just a really unhelpful way of thinking for me. And I would have never verbalized it. I would have never, ever said, I'm more important, or my career matters more than them, or they're just pawns for me. But I think functionally, without actively thinking in the other direction, that became maybe a pattern of the way that I, at least intuitively, acted and felt. And it didn't take too long for that to, not sit well with me, for me to see man, something's not right about this. Part of that was as I grew a little bit and matured and aged, I began to ask myself questions about what's the purpose of work and why am I doing this and does it even matter? And if my work was truly valuable and it mattered, then what about those other people that are doing something different than me? And so it just really my thinking started to change, and I began to be challenged in how I was thinking about things. And it was uncomfortable, but it was also a really good thing. And so I do think if we're going to make a change in this, if we have maybe some thinking that is not right. And again, it's this sort of thinking, because our culture is so success-driven, social media, influencer likes, approval-driven, materialistic. It's really easy to get caught up in this sort of mindset that I'm referring to here. And I think in order for us to reverse that, we do need to have some foundation for how do we think about the value of our cleaning team members. Because not only in, American big corporate life are employees often seen as expendable, but you go all throughout history and you look at people in higher positions of power, always viewed those under them as lesser or not as important, etc. And the most horrible outworkings of that are things like slavery. So I think we need a solid foundation to make that change. So there was something that I came across. So just getting out in the open there. So I am a Christian, and meaning I follow Jesus. I believe the Bible. And there was a passage in the New Testament that maybe help me see this in a bit more of a clear way and help maybe lay some foundation for my thinking on this. And I think it's been helpful. And as I say a foundation, like if we're going to build a culture and we're going to build certain actions into the organization, like there needs to be something we believe at the bottom that's sort of the root of that. And so this particular passage comes from 1 Corinthians. Now, so 1 Corinthians is written by the Apostle Paul, and this is after Jesus had come. And there's this church in Corinth that I would just refer to them as a really jacked up church. Like they've become Christians, they're followers of Jesus, but they're really dysfunctional. Like really, really dysfunctional. And there's lots of dysfunctional people in their midst. And there's fighting and bickering and quarreling and some gross immorality, et cetera, et cetera. And so here's something that Paul writes in sort of in the middle of the letter. And I'm just going to read this passage here. Take just a minute or so. It says, "For just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. For in one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, Jews or Greeks, slaves or free, and all were made to drink of one Spirit." So he's basically saying, hey, like you guys are all part of the church, all right? So there's, in a sense, this analogy here is there's one body. "For the body does not consist of one member, but of many. If the foot should say, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less a part of the body. Or if the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less a part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would be the sense of hearing? If the whole body were an ear, where would be the sense of smell? But as it is, God has arranged the members in the body, each one of them, as he chose. If all were a single member, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, yet one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. On the contrary, the parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable, and on the parts of the body that we think less honorable we bestow the greater honor. And our unpresentable parts are treated with greater modesty, which our more presentable parts do not require. But God has so composed the body, giving greater honor to the part that lacked it, that there may be no division in the body, but that the members may have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, all suffer together. If one member is honored, all rejoice together." And so you can see in this particular passage, you obviously have rich and poor and people put together and intact, and those whose lives are a train wreck. Some people in the context that Paul's talking about here, you have people who are maybe really gifted in certain things and are natural leaders, and you have other people that are not, and you just have all these stratifications of socioeconomic and moral, diversity. And he's saying, hey, none of you all are any better than another ultimately, and in some senses some of you have greater honor, as it were, that the head or the eye sort of as a more prominent place that the foot does not have. But the foot is needed, and it's good, and it's glorious to have feet that work. and we can't do one without the other. And so there's the head, or one of the more prominent parts of the body that we claim superiority, in reality is, in a real sense, in this analogy, is standing on the shoulders of maybe less honorable members that are making the whole thing work together. And so you can obviously see the parallels here in our organizations, is that our company functions as a unit. So let me just maybe draw. There's two principles as I think about this that we could draw out. And the first is that we are the company, similar to the analogy Paul's using. We are one body in a sense. Like, we are one group. We are one unit together. And we don't function alone. So the cleaner doesn't function alone. The supervisor doesn't function alone. The HR person, the owner, does not function alone. If I lost the cleaners, my function also would be gone. If I lost the supervisors, my function and the cleaner's function may be gone. Like, the whole thing works together like an organism. And when you pull out certain parts, the whole thing falls apart. Now, what this does for us is that it forces this belief, which I believe is reality too, forces us to begin to see people in a different kind of way. And it forces us to care for and love and appreciate and respect anyone and everyone, really regardless of where they are in the organization. So we can say that's principle number one, and that's a really good foundation to begin to lay. And number two, and this is sort of implicit in that particular passage that I read from Paul, is that and again, this may be where it's a little more controversial, if you're not a Christian, but that we're made in God's image is sort of comes with the package of a Christian worldview. And because of that, we have intrinsic value, and so our value is not rooted in something that we do, which would be, it's like viewed known as like functionalism. So our value is not rooted in our ability to perform certain things or to add some kind of, to do something makes us more valuable. I mean, it's true in an economic sense, but ultimately we have value because of who we are, and because of that, our work is valuable. It demands to be seen as valuable and respected. And God made us to work. And you start at the very beginning of Genesis, and that's God worked, and the very first thing he told man to do was to work. And so this sets the precedent for that all people are valuable intrinsically, and their work is valuable intrinsically because it's a valuable person doing that work. Now, some of this stuff sounds a bit philosophical or maybe a bit too religious for some people, but if you're going to lead an organization well, and you're going to create a culture in that organization that really sticks, you've got to have that philosophical or theological underpinning that sort of drives the actions of the organization. So a change in our beliefs or reorientation in our beliefs about reality change or modify our actions, including our words, and from there we begin to change the culture. And so as I maybe circle back around to myself at the beginning of my journey in all of this, is that it was hard for me to change the culture and to try to build the kind of company I knew I should, having the misguided and really not so good or immoral views that maybe I had about myself and other people and their value. And so I think that if you want to change the culture, if you want to change the way you lead and the way the organization functions and change the soul of the organization, I think that we have to begin with our beliefs about these things and then let that transform our actions, which will then change the culture and the organization. And we'll be leading from conviction, which I think will create a loyal following of people that want to be a part of this particular body, this particular company. So, hey, listen, I hope that's helpful. I hope it's encouraging to you. If you struggle with this at all on any level, even though maybe you would not voice it to anyone, sort of like me, I would never have told anyone that I was wrestling with some of those concepts or thoughts. I'd encourage you to let this maybe function as a stone in your shoe to think about some of these issues, and maybe that would transform what you believe and then change your leadership and the culture of your company as a result. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. If you found the information in this podcast helpful, please like and subscribe on whatever podcast platform that you're using. If you would like more resources or help to grow your cleaning company, head over to elitebsc.com. We have loads of articles, videos, free tools, coaching options, and a lot more. If your company is greater than $500K in revenue and you want to take your learning experience to the next level, check out our mastermind group. You can learn more about that at elitebsc.com/mastermind.